So China is being impacted. They've, going into this crisis, they were having, for example, spiking coal prices. That's a big problem for them because they get a lot of their power from coal, and so that's been an issue. In addition to obviously the oil and gas prices are a problem for them. Now they had a less acute gas issue than Europe, but Asia has been impacted by higher gas prices as well. In the longer run, one thing that looks like China's doing is that so a lot of these Western companies were forced or pretty much had to divest their Russian assets, really at pennies on the dollar, kind of just mark them down, get out of those positions. And so China has already stated a willingness, an interest in potentially coming up and scooping up some of these Russian energy commodity assets. And so that kind of continues the Belt and Road trend that China's been doing, where instead of reinvesting their dollar trade surpluses into treasuries, they've been investing them into making loans to developing countries that generally give them access to commodities or infrastructure. And so it seems like this kind of gives them an upper hand in terms of getting, kind of bargain priced energy and commodities.
Right. And if they're potentially one of the only buyers that Russia has available, they're going to be able to negotiate particularly low prices on these commodities.
Well, at least on the commodity interests. I think over time, Russia will probably be able to access a number of markets that they don't really have the ability to select where they get their commodities from. So maybe we can look at, countries like India, countries like Brazil. We'll see over time, the longer this drags out. I think Russia will probably be able to find buyers for its commodities. But during this period where they need capital and many of their assets are selling very cheaply, that does give China a window to come in and get a lot of those assets.
I'm struggling to see who actually is really benefiting from this for what appears to be and I understand the full historical context of this, the accusations of NATO placing missiles closer to Russia, but this is a global lose-lose right now.
That's why the extent of this conflict was somewhat surprising to me. I mean, I don't think a lot of people would have been surprised by some activity around eastern Ukraine, around some of those borders. But the extent of this attack surprised me and surprised many, because as you point out, there's almost no winners from this, right? So Russians are, the vast majority of Russians are not benefiting. Many of them have gone over and fought and died. Ukrainians obviously are not benefiting. Russian oligarchs aren't benefiting. It's hard to see who is benefiting from this. I think, if this drags out, China could be a beneficiary. Potentially, for the reasons we discussed, that it kind of gives them a little bit more influence over Russia, because they're saying, basically Russia now has fewer options, and so it might be good for China. It's hard to say for sure. It also gave China kind of intel on what would happen if you tried to invade an area. It kind of gives China a playbook of, okay, we need to avoid this problem, we need to avoid this problem. So I think they might be a beneficiary, but overall, there are people that focus on geopolitics and cultural histories, obviously a lot more than me. So for me, it looks irrational, but it doesn't look like there's any winners to me, really.
Well, what about Ukraine? Does it still have any type of functioning economy?
Well, the economy is so partly what we're seeing is that Russia is seizing some of their shipping assets and things like that. And so part of why wheat, for example, is so expensive is that Russia is a big wheat exporter, but so is Ukraine. And so to the extent that Russia is able to control large portions of Ukraine, I think what we're seeing is that we're kind of missing a harvest season, we're missing a planting season over there, and so that's going to affect global wheat prices and global just agricultural in general, and then. Obviously it's hard to function even in an inflationary economy, let alone a war economy. It's very hard to have a functioning economy. You have well over 1 million refugees spreading into the rest of Europe. And so it is hard to call that a functioning economy at this current time. And so that's obviously impacting a lot of that region. But then specifically, it contributes to the commodity shortfalls that we see worldwide.
And wheat prices, why are they so important? Is it because they are a benchmark for other agricultural prices, or is it just because wheat is such an important part of the production of so many food staples?
Basically, along with soybeans and rice, wheat is a huge staple for human consumption. Now we can talk about the health of eating a lot of wheat, for example,
Yeah.
but it is a huge source of calories for people around the world. And it's in almost everything. It's in all sorts of, it's not just bread and pasta. It's an input to all sorts of kind of processed foods, all sorts of staples that they eat around the world. And so, for example, Egypt gets a lot of its wheat imports from Ukraine and Russia, right? So now they have I think they put out basically a restriction on exporting some of their food staples, because now every country in the world has to reassess its food security and say, okay, are we getting enough? And because that's when you have like revolutions, like when you have food prices go up, that's how you get revolutions. When people can't put food on the table, that's when they just go out in the street and protest, and you're willing to get violent because they kind of have nothing else to lose at that point. And so pretty much the number one kind of priority of any government in the world is making sure that people are fed and that there's no food insecurity problems, at least if it's possible. And so spiking wheat prices, in addition to being highly inflationary in general, it's also like a big barometer for usually social upheaval, especially in some of the more vulnerable countries out there.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really, really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.